Hey kids, it's time for Pizza and Pop Culture with our Rogues Gallery of Talent. Coming at you on location from Eastside Pizza in Wallingford, Connecticut. Now serving up geek pizza with extra cheese.
Ladies and gentlemen, live from your computer, this is episode 4 of Pizza and Pop Culture. Hey, welcome everybody. You can find us on, if you're looking for us, of course, on Twitter and on Facebook, Pizza Pop Culture. Our website, pizzapopculture.com. And I want to let everybody know that if you visit pizzapopculture.com, right in the upper right-hand corner of the website is a little orange, yellowish kind of a button. Support the show. Click on that. Really helps us a lot. Lets us know who's watching. Follow us. Subscribe to us on the podcast platform of your choice. And that would be great.
You did that very well.
Oh, thank you, Keith Larsen. That's Keith Larsen. We got Pete Bradley, and we got Mr. Edson Gomes for the first time. Hey, Edson, how you doing, man?
Good. Glad to see you all.
Yeah, I'm glad we got Edson. This is gonna be fun.
We're doing it virtually as a Zoom meeting right now, and so we can see each other virtually over top of our computers. But normally, we like to hang out at this cool little swanky place in Wallingford, Connecticut called Eastside Pizza. Great food. I love the pizza sauce there. I will never not say that during a podcast. Absolutely love it. George and Angelo Alexopoulos. Thank you, guys. What are we talking about today, guys?
We're doing this on Zoom. Today is May the 11th. Yep. Because we're forced to. Because of this ongoing COVID-19 thing. Part of that is that businesses are going to start to reopen in about a week, and the comic book industry is going to be one of them. Actually, DC's already been back out there. So there's been a lot of weird developments. At first, the hysteria broke that this is going to be the death of comics. And it's going to be the end of comic book shops. And in some cases, that will be true. And I think in a lot of cases, titles will be cut from all the publishers and they're going to scale down. But once people took a step back, took a breath, and reassessed, we're actually getting a kind of a reinvented comic book industry, I think. But it looks pretty strong, stronger than I think a lot of people would give it credit for. Wouldn't you say, Edson?
Yeah, it's been actually amazing how as soon as they couldn't make it out to the comic shops, everybody coming out of nowhere or everywhere in social media, where are we going to get our comic books from? When Diamond, I believe it was about a month ago, when Diamond distributors said they were going to shut down operations, that's when it set everybody in an uproar. Where are we going to get our comics? And it's, you could tell the audience out there is strong, and this is just, especially now that they're stuck at home, it's like it's part of their entertainment.
Yeah, I think just for people who don't know anything about comics, Diamond Distributors is the sole distributor for every single comic book publisher there is. They're the only game in town, and a lot of that thinking is because they're the only ones that want to be. But again, that was just proven wrong recently. DC found a way around that. Yeah,
and that actually bothered me for quite a while. Why the comic book industry would just go through one distributor like a monopoly. That's the basic definition of monopoly. And if even outside this COVID-19 crisis, what if there was mismanagement and they went bankrupt? What were you going to do then? I mean, I never really understood why they would just be through one distributor. And it looks like because of this particular event, I guess, should I say, now DC, and I'm trying to think, did Marvel also jump on with other distributors? I'm not sure, but definitely DC now has branched out. They're not doing away with Diamond. They're still going through them, but now they're branched out to 2 other distributors, basically the 2 biggest, I think, online comic shops, and had just morphed into their own distributing.
Yeah, one is Midtown Comics in I can't think of the name right now because we're
DCBS, Discount Comic Book Store. Yep.
right. So they formed a distribution company, which, you go back to early March, mid-March, nobody knew that there was a way around Diamond. And then, like, when Diamond came out and said they were broke and they couldn't even pay the publishers what they owed them, it looked pretty bleak. But quickly, these mega stores put their brains together and came up with a solution. And then it lit a fire under Diamond, apparently, because they came roaring back. So,
Now, can I ask a question, you guys? This is not, comic books have not ever been something that were in my world. Just give me a little education here. So somebody creates the content and then somebody else distributes it. Tell me in just a few words, what's the picture look like, Edson?
So yeah, you have the producers, say Marvel, DC. They have their writers, their artists. They create the stories and the images, and they send it to like as we said, Diamond prints them all out and distributes them. Yeah, so they're not printed at the comic book publishers. They're printed at Diamond. Yeah, and then distributes them out to all the stores.
The direct market, right?
Wow, that is like a monopoly almost.
Right.
What about all the littler houses?
They do the same thing. What you have to do to qualify for distribution through Diamond is you have to have a subscription rate of 1,000 people.
Oh, I see.
So once you hit 1,000, this is what happened to our friends at the Charlton Arrow when they tried to bring the Charlton comics back a few years ago. They finally got distribution because they had those numbers by partnering with AC Comics. But up until then, if you wanted to get your comics in shops, you would have to do it by hand. You'd have to print them yourself and walk them into a store and ask them to sell it for you.
Really?
Yeah. If you wanted distribution from Diamond, you had to get 1,000. So that's how it works. But they were they had the only game in town, and then they hit this financial crisis, and it looked like that was going to be the end of print comics. And then, the thing early on was like, will they just go digital? We'll just be digital comics. Well, I don't think that's very popular, as popular as they thought, because just the other day here, Marvel shut down their digital comics May 8th. And it was 2 days after they said that, what'd they say on May 6th? They said
they were going
exclusive stuff, right?
Yep. A lot of their titles were going exclusive, yes. Yep.
Why did they shut it down?
It's unclear. A lot of people are speculating. They're shutting down their digital store where you could buy digital comics on the Marvel app. They're just going to let third parties handle it now. They're still going to produce digital comics, but they're not putting all their eggs into that basket, it looks like. And I'm guessing because the numbers are just not there. I don't think people want that.
Or dare I say, maybe it's because people are trying to spread the wealth a little bit. Is it possible that they're trying to, like with the distribution, trying to encourage other places to distribute stuff, make a little money?
I think early on it looked like, and Pete can answer this, it looked like this was their excuse to get rid of print comics, which they've been trying to do for years. I mean,
yeah, the print comics are not doing well. It's slowly dying, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the scuttlebutt is that Disney wants to close up print comics and just lease the characters on somebody else, like IDW or Dark Horse or somebody. Just lease them off. This way there can be a steady revenue stream. But them suddenly closing up their store themselves, so that just smells to me of Disney trying to cut a few corners. So this way you can make the digital comics. That's just part of the business. But let Comixology handle it.
You're right. I just it's funny because I've been reading this great comic from Image Comics, an independent publisher that Edson gave me for my birthday called Velvet. It's a great series. I highly recommend it. And I usually never read the letters in the back, but for some reason, just the other day, I was skimming the letters. And I'd like to just read a snippet of a letter from a guy who wrote in for the first time in his life. And he said he grew up reading Spider-Man in the newspaper and blah, blah, blah. And he decided to get into comics by reading the New 52 from DC digitally. And he said the stories were okay and blah, blah, blah. And then he saw an ad for this comic here, Velvet. And he went and bought it at the store. And he said, I never owned a physical comic, but when I went into my local shop, picked up Velvet #1 and held it in my hands, I understood. It's an art. It's not just about speech bubbles and story. It's about bringing characters and environments to life on a page. It was amazing. It was something I never really understood before. Previously, the panels were just pictures on a screen showing the action that the dialogue couldn't convey. But once I saw Velvet on the printed page, I realized that I'd been missing the bulk of what a comic is. Needless to say, I'm a huge fan of Velvet, and it's opened a whole new world to me. One that includes weekly trips to my local comic shop, my own weekly pull list, bags, and boards, and a new appreciation for an art form that I didn't really understand before. I can't thank you guys enough. And the author, Ed Brubaker, writes back, I've been reading comics all my life, and while I read some on my laptop or iPad once in a while, I think print will always be the best medium for comics. There's just something more comforting to me about the feel of paper in your hands and being able to take in the spread of pages all at once. Glad you've made your local comic shop a regular part of your life. I think that sums up why digital comics are not the be-all, end-all.
It's like telling Da Vinci, we'd like you to paint the Mona Lisa, and we're only going to show it though as a picture.
You have to use a tablet.
Yeah, or you painted it, but we're only going to put it up in a museum someplace, a picture of it. We don't want to we don't care about the real image anymore. Right. I mean, comics, it's as much about the story as the illustration drives it. Pen and paper. It's got to be on paper somewhere.
Right.
I agree.
And I agree with all those points. I mean, I've never been a fan of digital comics. I always like holding it in my hands. Just that he said, going back and forth, you can't do that digitally. And it's been quite a lesson to me. I honestly didn't know myself how popular or unpopular digital comics were. I didn't know the scale of it. I know publishers were pushing it because it's obviously cheaper. But because of this crisis, people started talking about, well, now that Diamond's not going to distribute it anymore, well, let's try selling them digitally. I mean, it's another medium. And it started with the independents mostly. I believe it was Dark Horse, IDW, came right out and said, we are not selling the digital versions of it if it's not the physical. It was incredible, but I loved hearing this. It's like they know the physical book is so much better, and they're not going to exclusively just sell digital without the physical medium. And it was incredible.
That's a good point. And actually, Marvel followed by saying, we will not release anything digitally, not in print either. So they
followed it.
Everybody started to, walk it back.
Yep, exactly. I think some of the things that people might not realize is just how much other industries have relied on comic books. I mean, the film industry, how many movies, and mostly in the last 20 or 30 years, are based on the characters and stories of comic books. All these streaming services now making all these series, all based on comic books. Toy industry, video game industry, these all get their idea. A lot of their businesses get their ideas from comic books.
The sad part is that the big two don't put that kind of value into it. As Pete said, they're looking to lease them off. I think AT&T is going to sell off DC as well.
It's only a matter of time.
Yeah.
Really.
What is the what do you guys think? We've talked about what the problem is. What can be done, do you think, by us as consumers? What can we do to help get the message back that, some of us, maybe lots of us, really like comic books?
My first thought when you asked that question, and I'm sure Edson will be right up my back on this one, is that we grew up, I've known Edson almost 40 years, and we've always read comics. We've taken breaks from them, but we always end up back there. When we started, they were about 60 cents each, maybe 75 cents, and they were on newsprint. And you have a company called Alterna Comics out of New Hampshire that does exactly that. And their books are $1 or $1.50, and they self-distribute. If the comic book industry would stop printing on high gloss paper and charging you $5 a pop for 20 pages of entertainment and scale it back, I would have no problem buying Batman on newsprint for $1. or $1.50. I would much rather buy 5 issues of Batman on newsprint than 1 on glossy paper with a variant cover with a hologram on it.
That's a great point. I mean, they should definitely go back. I mean, make it more affordable. I mean, you have kids that these days that really can't afford to buy the, what is it, $4 or $5 or even higher, some $10 comics. You got to make sure it gets out to everybody. Kids love it. A lot of kids that when I was a kid, learned to read on comic books. You have to get them out to everybody. Mm-hmm. Make them affordable.
People used to ask me, where did you get that vocabulary? I'm like, Marvel Comics.
Yeah. What about new content, Pete? I mean, you guys, what do you think about, how much new content is there in the world of comic books?
Well, it's infinite because you have such a wide palette. And we're not just talking about superheroes. Edson and I are big fans of the independent comics because they're not superhero comics.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. There is so much out there, but even in this podcast, even in this discussion, we've stuck to Marvel and DC. We think about the movies. We think about all the merchandising. But the point is that there's comics. When we talk about comics, we're not just talking about superheroes. We're talking about what? What is the genre? What is the menu of all this stuff?
Every genre. It's every genre you can think of. Anything that you can pick up a novel. You can make in a comic book. It's horror, it's thriller, it's the one that Keith was just talking about had nothing to do with superheroes. It's an espionage. You think Jason Bourne, female version of Jason Bourne.
Right.
That's basically. So it's as he said. As Keith said, it's limitless. You can put any story that you would in any other medium on comic books.
I'd like to hear from our listeners and our listeners and their friends and their family, and I'd like them to write in and tell us what comics they're reading, what they like. Because to me, I love graphic novels. That's basically a glorified comics. It's not necessarily on newsprint, and it's not a licensed comic per se, but it's a story told with pictures. There's lots of that stuff out there, and that's something that, and you hold it in your hand. I don't know. I just think that should never go away, and I'd like to know what people are looking at and listening and watching, rather.
Well, I think a great segment for down the road would be movies that have come out based on comics that you don't know were based on comics because they're not superhero movies.
Yeah,
you would be surprised at how many. And these are people, I guarantee, they go, oh, comics are for kids, but they love the movie.
Right.
They would never know that was a comic book.
And TV shows as well. Yep.
Right.
I get this at work all the time. I'm kind of like the resident expert on comic book. No one there that I know collects the comic, but yet they're constantly talking about the movies. And I would hear the conversations and have to kind of subtly correct them about the origins and some kind of nuance. And they always come to me when it comes to, what really happened here in the books. They may not collect the comic books, but they're relying on the medium that comes out of it.
So you're telling me Jack Nicholson didn't kill Batman's parents?
To get the ball rolling, Keith, of what you mentioned, like Road to Perdition, the one where Tom Hanks plays a hitman, that was a comic book movie.
That's exactly what I.
Yep.
Great point.
Or V for Vendetta. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, V for Vendetta or
Watchmen.
Hell was another one for Watchmen. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, things that you don't always know that. Hey, that started off as a comic. And just because it's a comic doesn't mean it's for kids. I remember going to see Watchmen, and some mom had brought the entire neighborhood worth of kids, and that was entertaining.
No, but you're absolutely right. That whole comment about comics not for kids is like cartoons are not. Everyone's saying, "Oh, it's a cartoon. That's for kids." You're so right about that. Comics can be so sophisticated. Even
the superhero comics can be sophisticated. We're not saying that you have to read comics that aren't superheroes. And I think it started back in the 70s when Green Goblin threw Gwen Stacy off the bridge. And Peter Parker, Spider-Man tried to save his girlfriend, and he broke her neck trying to save her and killed her. There's stuff that heavy duty in comic books, even superhero comic books. We've had the Green Arrow, Green Lantern crossover in the 70s where Green Arrow's ward was a junkie, and they had to address that. And they've always carried adult themes if you look hard enough. I mean, some of them are goofy, no doubt. But
Tony Stark is a functioning alcoholic.
there you go.
Yes, exactly.
You know,
I've read.
he's all personable and wacky in the movies because they had to tone it down for the general audience. But you read those comics, and the actual storyline was entitled "Demon in a Bottle."
Yeah, I talked to Bob Layton about that a lot, and the only bone they threw Bob on that was letting Tony get a little out of control at his party because he thought he was dying in the second movie. You know, Demon in a Bottle would have been an incredible Iron Man movie, but they weren't going to go there.
Great storyline, though.
If you were, I'm curious to know what you guys are reading and why. I'm the most pedantic here. I've read some Batman and I've read some Superman. I'm a huge Batman fan, and I actually know someone whose father was one of the illustrators for
Jim Apatow.
Yeah,
right, Jim Apatow.
For a while, but that's pretty mainstream. What do you like to read, Edson?
Definitely a lot of Batman. The Batman's always been my favorite. Somebody who can just go about the superhero business without quote unquote superpowers, using his mind. Is always great point. And money.
Let's not forget about that money.
Let's not forget.
What's your superpower again?
I'm a billionaire. Yeah, I'm rich. Right.
And I loved. We talked about. Pete, you made a good point about the Marvel and DC trying to get rid of them and going more to digital. But all these, I've really gotten more enamored with the independents more and more, other than outside the superheroes. A lot of Image titles are great, and I totally recommend Postal, Nailbiter. Keith's going to know about these. They're so awesome. And there's a book called Lazarus that I like. You mentioned the Velvet or all of Brubaker's
Hideout
titles are great.
Yeah, Fatal. It got to a point where, and I can completely agree with Edson, these Image comics are so good that I always put Spider-Man and Batman at the top of my read list, and it got to the point where Postal and Nailbiter and these kind of books were landing on top to read when they came in first. So they are really that good. Creepy serial killer stuff, and it's just awesome.
I go the other way. I don't necessarily read comics that have been turned into properties. A lot of the stuff that I read are properties that have been turned into comics. Like I'm a big fan of the earlier run of the Transformers from IDW and Aliens from Dark Horse and Godzilla from IDW. So so everything that I've been reading goes the other way. But if I'm going to be drawn to anything, it's probably going to be more horror comics, just because I like the blood and the guts and the veins and the teeth and the.
And now that there's no comics code, they can do all of that.
That's right.
I got to say, IDW, Dynamite, and Dark Horse do a great job with those acquired properties. I've read the James Bond books from Dynamite. They were, Dynamite. So, I enjoy those too. And those Transformers books are actually really good.
Yeah, the comics allow a property to do more than they could possibly ever do in a movie or a TV show. Because, you want to animate an endless army of aliens. Well, that's going to cost you a lot of money, but you get a flat fee per page. You can draw, your character facing off an army of monsters, and it actually, I think, enhances and enriches some of these intellectual properties.
And they've had some fun crossovers too, like they had the Transformers meet the crew from Star Trek, and they drew the Star Trek like the 1973 cartoon. Those are fun. G.I. Joe meets Transformers, or Rom meets the Transformers.
Transformers meets Mars Attacks is a good one.
That was
Remember when your voice machine had that as a message, Pete?
Oh yeah. I had my voicemail. It would click over and I just beep.
I have a serious question though, guys, and I don't want anyone to just judge me or anything like that. I just need to know a simple yes or no. Is that hentai considered comics? Can I get that in a book form?
Yeah, you can. There's a store in New York that Edson and I love called Kinokuniya. It's all
Kinokuniya, yes.
Yeah, you find it in there.
Wait, you guys know a lot about this. What is this called now? Let me write this down. Spell that. Never mind. No, I don't want to know. I'm just kidding.
They moved. They're down at
PG.
are they
It
at
could be
Bryant Park
PG.
now? Where are they? Bryant Park, Pete? Is that where they are now?
I genuinely don't know.
They
The
used to
last
be
time I was there,
Rockefeller.
they were at Rockefeller Center.
They moved over. I think it's Bryant Park. They're right off there now. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's Alan. If you will, you'll find anything in there.
I won't be going there for a while, but when I do, I'll check. All right, guys, I think we're almost out of time here. Let's wrap it up.
Recommendations, Edson. What do you recommend? What's your hot title right now?
Oh, well, they just did the sequels to both. Hate going back, but I love them. The sequel to Postal is Postal Deliverance, and you can read into that second word. And the crazy timing of it, which I thought this was just horrible. Joshua Williamson came back with he did his long run on Nailbiter, which was a great story, which we could do a whole podcast on just that. And now he had just started with the first issue of Nailbiter Returns, and when the whole, Diamond just refused to distribute, and I still haven't gotten my first issue yet, but I was looking so forward to it.
I know. I'm gonna have to go back and reread the first 6 issues of Postal Deliverance because I won't remember what's going on by the time I get issue 7 or wherever they're at. I know it's 6 or 7.
Yeah, 6 or 7. Yeah.
Yeah. And I see Batman's going bi-monthly again after they said he wasn't.
Yep.
Starting in June. So good. I'm glad.
I like it that way.
Pete, what do you recommend?
Dark Horse does this interesting series of where they take original versions of screenplays or unproduced screenplays and then turn them into comics form, like George Lucas's original treatment for Star Wars. In this case, it's called The Star Wars, and they did the unproduced sequel to Alien 3, which was an amazing read, and they're doing Predator next, the original versions of Predator. And I'm going to take this opportunity, if you happen to be on Comixology, which is digital, Comixology.com, look up Bird Brain the comic strip.
Who produces that?
Some yutz named Bradley. But yeah, look up Bird Brain the comic strip. It's fun. It's entertaining. It's sequential. It's sequential entertainment at its finest.
Yeah, it harkens back to the old, the comic strips you read in the daily paper. That was the general idea behind it. It's just as funny. I'm going to just piggyback on what Edson said because I like all the same titles as he does. And I can't recommend, go back 4 or 5 years and look into this 15-issue run of Velvet. Man, I wish he'd do another one. He kept saying he was gonna. I wish he would. Ed Brubaker is an amazing writer. If you don't know, he's responsible for the Captain America Winter Soldier run that turned into what I think is the best Marvel Studios movie yet. So, that's my 2 cents. And one last thing I'd like to give the comic book industry advice on before we go is stop doing all these mega crossover things where you're forced to buy 40 issues and comics that you don't care about. And if you stop doing that, you probably help yourself out revenue-wise too. Because you think it's going to generate more. No, we don't want it anymore.
It actually backfires because people know they're not going to be able to get them all, so they just give up on the whole storyline. So that's what happens with me.
Same. And plus, they're always a huge letdown.
Well, obviously nobody cares about what I'm watching, so that's no problem. Or reading.
Are you reading a comic?
No, I'm not reading any comics.
All right.
I don't have any comics right now. That I want to talk about out loud. No, I just don't have any. I don't have any comics. Wow, Edson, really nice having you. I can't wait till you join us again.
Yeah.
This has been so much fun.
It is. It's fun. It's a
You're
lot of fun.
so knowledgeable, and you have a great sound.
I can't wait till we actually, and I'm crossing my fingers, be able to get together, with some version of social distancing, maybe, I don't know, but at least get together in one place.
Yeah,
Cool.
we'll just move our chairs a little farther apart.
Yeah.
We'll be fine.
Guys, you are listening to Pizza and Pop Culture, and we're going to take a break, and we'll be back.
It was the three-legged dog of comics.
It was bad.
These two gentlemen met in jail, and then when they got out, they started publishing.
It should have been mobsters instead of doing what they're doing in comics.
Management there was questionable at times.
Some of it has to do with people who go to jail.
We are sinners, we have corrupted the youth.
Stuff that should never have been sold to kids.
And then there was Charlton. I couldn't quite tell what they were doing.
Charlton was just a hodgepodge of weird titles.
What is this? Who am I dealing with?
John threw nickels around like they were manhole covers.
CATAP. They were cheap.
Hell yes, they're cheap.
They were a special kind of special is what they were.
Critic was horrible.
You could smell them beginning to decay even as they were rolling off the press.
At one point, they actually did have to move the comics operation into a bowling alley.
It's something out of a sitcom.
We want to publish comic books in the worst way, and they did.
It's been called the street fighting cousin of Marvel and DC. Maybe you've heard of them. Probably not. But you do know the industry legends that called it home. This is Charlton Comics. Follow at charltonmovie.com.
Oh, it's going to suck.
And we are back. Pizza and Pop Culture here today with Mr. Keith Larsen and Mr. Peter Bradley.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello. Hey, it's so important, fans, that if you are interested in leasing some advertising space with us, we sure could use the money. No, seriously. It's a great place there to advertise yourself. Let us know what you're doing. Let other people know what you're doing. So
Yeah,
if you're
this
interested,
space for rent.
Space for him.
And remember, we like money, and we require lots of it to live as we see fit.
That's right. Well, you require lots.
We have an addiction to food and shelter we can't kick.
So
send us an email. Send us an email at pizzapopculture@gmail.com if you're interested in an ad.
Have you seen the new Star Trek cartoon?
I've seen
Lower Decks?
No, I've seen previews of it. I've seen still images from it, and I couldn't care less, to be honest with you.
I mean, it's by the guys that do Rick and Morty, and but the thing is that really rubs me the wrong way. It's supposed to be canon, so any serious Trekkies would have to watch the original series, Next Generation, all the movies, and then watch this comedy by Rick and Morty guys,
And Deep Space Nine, and Voyager,
and exactly.
So you got to watch 617 episodes of Rick Berman Star Trek, 4 Rick Berman Star Trek movies, and the 79 original series shows, and the 6 original series movies to understand this.
And then,
that's
and then to watch a comedy, But the thing is, this is all just blowback from Secret Hideout and Bad Robot. This is all their idea.
Wait, Bad Robot. Isn't that
J.J. Abrams?
J.J. Abrams, dude? Oh, boy.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know how much he's got to do with Star Trek nowadays, but it's his boy over at Secret Hideout.
Alex Kurtzman.
Yeah, but he's an import from J.J., and I'm not a fan. I am not a fan of J.J.
Have you watched any of the you've obviously watched some of the trailers and stuff for it. What do you think?
Oh, who, me?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that all of what JJ Trek has done is basically just gone completely in the wrong direction. It forgot what it was. It forgot what Star Trek was supposed to be, and it just kind of turned everything into dumb action movies. And that's not the message that was there originally, and that's not what makes Star Trek Star Trek.
The Star Trek 2009 movie was fun at the time. It was like this, hypercharged look at the original series. And I think the casting was great. I hold nothing against the actors. But that said, not only has that movie not aged well at all, it's borderline obnoxious now. The sequels were downright awful. You're right, it's not Star Trek. And all they do is they hit on idiosyncrasies of the characters and turn that into their basic personality trait. And that's who they are. They're these one-note people who keep playing the same note over and over again, and it doesn't work.
And that's pretty much a JJ movie right there. Is with Star Trek and Star Wars, it was just here. It's a character trait we're gonna just beat into the ground, and I think he misses the point of whatever he does.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here, guys, and ask, what if you were making the cartoon? Tell me what you would make. What would the vision be? What would it look like when you're watching it?
You want to go first?
Oh, I certainly wouldn't. I certainly wouldn't go with Rick and Morty I mean, not that there's anything wrong with Rick and Morty. I love that show. It's absolutely brilliant. But I think the wackiness of it is not for Star Trek. I think if I was going to do a Star Trek cartoon, I would have gone the other direction. I would have made it much more serious. Like
the Saturday morning version that they did.
Like the Saturday morning version, or like Clone Wars just ended over. Dave Filoni just wrapped up Clone Wars over on Disney Plus, and that was a serious show from the get-go. I think Star Trek should have been done as a serious show.
Right.
Well, I think that what you have there, Dave Filoni is a lifelong Star Wars fan, and he understands and respects what George Lucas accomplished in that original trilogy, and took that tone into what they did with the Clone Wars. What you have with J.J. Abrams is a guy who doesn't understand Star Trek one bit, didn't watch any Star Trek until he had to, and decided that he was going to make his own version of whatever he gleaned from what he watched. That original animated series from the 70s was treated as season 4 of the original Star Trek. You had the writers writing scripts for that show. You had the original voice talent coming back to reenact their characters. So it was handled as a continuation of what was taken from them by the network at the time. That's why I don't think this is going to work. I mean, they're just doing a spoof, I think. I don't know what they're trying to accomplish. But if I was to do it, Alan, to answer your question, I would do it exactly as they did it in 1973 with the animated series.
See, my thing is, I was never a fan of the Saturday morning cartoon, but I watched it. I like cartoons, but I didn't like that they turned Star Trek into a cartoon, because to me at the time, as a kid, my thinking was, well, they're just trying to turn it into something less than what it is. I feel the same way about this cartoon now. They're turning something that's, as you say, Pete, something that's really should be canon. It's like you just don't mess with certain universes, and here they're trying to make it into a cartoon. Why? What's the purpose? What purpose does it serve? I didn't like that then, and that's how I feel about it now. That's short-sighted, and it's not very creative. But I like seeing the characters in real life, because Star Trek to me was about real life in outer space.
The Star Trek animated series from the 70s kind of served its purpose, because it was the only place they could go at the time to keep those stories moving forward. They're very good stories. A couple of them are just as good as any live action episode, and they were probably scripts from live action episodes that were never produced, that were altered into the half-hour cartoon show. The animation was cheap. It was very low budget, that kind of thing. It did look pretty bad. But they're really good stories, and I would, if you're gonna, for whatever reason, make a Star Trek cartoon, I don't know why we even need one, but I would continue that philosophy. But the idea, you're right, Alan, an animated series now in 2020, why? What is the point?
I mean, does it bring in a new audience? I don't know. And I just wanted to, I've not ever been a Rick and Morty fan, but didn't Rick and Morty go on hiatus or something like that a few months ago?
No, there's been long gaps between seasons.
Oh.
It's not so much a hiatus per se of like, okay, we need to take a rest. It's just they do one big season and then stop and then start writing a new one, and it's been spaces between seasons.
But correct me if I'm wrong, Pete. Isn't a new season like just coming out? I thought I saw an ad for it someplace like a week ago. That's starting in May.
They did the first half of season 4, and then now they're doing the second half of season 4.
Gotcha. Thank you, sir.
No, and they wind up spoofing everything from Aliens to Back to the Future, which is where the whole show started off, as a Back to the Future spoof. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some Indiana Jones references in there somewhere, but they managed to tackle and deconstruct just about every facet of pop culture. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's definitely strange, and I like strange. But I think the problem with Star Trek is that they're in the wrong hands, and unfortunately, Viacom CBS is stuck with Bad Robot for another. Is it 2 or 3 more years on this contract?
I don't know.
But
oh wow!
Rumors this week surfaced. that Netflix might be trying to purchase Viacom CBS. There are tens of billions of dollars in debt, and it's insurmountable debt. So the idea is that Sherry Redstone might be just selling it off and walking away.
Oh, that would be a plus.
And that would void the contract with Bad Reboot, as I call them, and Jar Jar Abrams.
That is great. Bad Reboot and Jar Jar.
Bad Reboot. Jar Jar Abrams.
Great.
Well, I mean, it's bad enough what he did to Star Trek, but he also, in my opinion, just took a beating. He bludgeoned Star Wars pulverized it into something unrecognizable. So, the guy can just piss off as far as I'm concerned. I don't understand where he has gotten this reputation as like the next Steven Spielberg. I've seen nothing from him. Yes, the movies are pretty to look at, but he can't tell a story. He happens to tell the same story over and over a lot, using his same tricks and tropes. The lens flare thing, he's just exhausting to me.
Yeah, don't tell the story.
He's Ed Wood with money.
And lens lighting techniques, yeah. When the movies look like that, it's no fun to watch. When you see it, and here's J.J. Abrams, and you're going to see that same style and that same look. It's not any fun to watch, especially if the story is bad. It's not told well. Any story can be bad or good. It's just the way in which you tell it. And I don't know.
That Rise of Skywalker, they put it on Disney Plus last week, and I gave it another shot, and I couldn't finish it. It is so bad, and the stakes in it are taken down. So I mean, it's just I can't even articulate. When you keep killing characters and bringing them back to life 3 minutes later, because it just doesn't matter. Not to mention the fact that it played out like a video game with finding MacGuffins with these strange people that show up to help them and disappear again to get to the next level, to get to the whole thing was just a smashed together mess. And this coming back to life thing, he's been doing this. How many movies has he done this? Blood and Coming Back to Life and Alex Kurtzman and Robert Orsi, all these guys, they keep Damon Lindelof, they keep sharing this same idea.
Yeah, that ending of that movie was almost as bad as the ending of quote unquote episode 3 when Darth Vader was born. And I will never forget. Did I talk about this last time?
No.
Yeah. Did I talk about that? That was just ridiculous. It was like he's sitting in a plastic chair. I really looked around the theater. And I thought, is this a joke? Did they stop the film and cut something else in? I really, honest and for God, thought that's what happened.
Well,
I just couldn't believe
that one. That was Lucas. You can't blame JJ for that one. That was George Lucas.
I don't care who it was. That was just awful. But they both have a similar ending. It's like, you got to be kidding me. How can somebody's got to really finally die? Of all the people that died, they kill Han Solo?
Yeah, well, that's because Harrison Ford's been asking for that for how many movies now?
Right, but still, that's like Leonard Nimoy. They killed him off and he came back to life.
Same thing. He thought, I think in Leonard Nimoy's case, he didn't like the way Spock was handled in Star Trek: The Motion Picture and assumed that it would probably be torture to go through the Wrath of Khan again. So he wanted them to kill him, and then they did, and then the movie was great and a big hit. And Spock was handled really well, and he just said, "Oh, I'll come back if you want me to." And then thanks for painting us into the corner, Lenny.
Yeah.
Now we got to make a really crappy sequel just to bring you back.
Speaking of crappy sequels,
Oh,
you mentioned Harrison Ford earlier, and I think we can all agree he was a little too old to be tackling Han Solo again. He's going to be tackling Indiana Jones again.
Is he really in it?
Apparently that is the plan, that they are going to do an Indiana Jones 5, and Harrison Ford is going to be in it. I mean, he was I think way too old to be playing Han Solo, and there's no way in creation he should be playing Indiana Jones.
No, he's like
in a 5th movie. He was too old for number 4, and that was what, 10 years ago?
12.
12 years ago.
Yeah. I think he's like 77 now.
God bless him if he wants to do it, but for my money, they should have just done Indiana Jones 1, 2, and 3 and stopped it there.
Unless they're gonna kind of use him in the same role they used Sean Connery, where he's got a son now or a protege.
Well, that wouldn't be unreasonable to think because he's
I think that's what they were trying to do with Shia LaBeouf, but he had his little breakdown.
Shia LaBeouf.
I think
he's not coming back.
Recast it and reboot it and use Chris Pratt. Chris Pratt would be.
I wouldn't mind seeing that.
That's a good idea.
I saw that first Jurassic World, and there was the scene where she comes out to see him at his trailer there, and he just had the Indiana Jones thing going. I'm like, this guy could be Indiana Jones.
Chris Pine is really good. Yeah.
No, not Chris Pine. Chris Pratt.
Oh, Chris Pratt.
Chris Pratt.
Sorry. Yeah.
Well, Chris Pine's not that bad either. I think he could pull it off. I think he played a Harrison Ford character. Didn't he play Jack Ryan in one of those?
Yeah, you're right.
He did. Thank you for saving my bacon, Pete. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Everybody gets those Chris's. All those. How many? 4 of them? Chris Pine, Chris Pratt, Chris Hemsworth, and Chris Evans. Yeah.
Did you see that as a rumor, Keith? Chris Pratt?
No.
Chris Pratt has been rumored to take over the role of Indiana Jones in an upcoming reboot of the franchise. But Harrison Ford set the record straight. I'm Indiana Jones. When I'm gone, he's gone. It's easy. That's what he said.
Oh, I guess Harrison Ford loves that character, much unlike his Han Solo love. He hates the Han Solo character. But no, like I said, I saw him in the Jurassic World and said, this guy could do Indiana Jones.
Oh.
He kind of reminded me of young Harrison Ford. And, Raiders of the Lost Ark is my favorite movie of all time to this day. And I mentioned on one of our earlier episodes, it played at the Center Cinema in Wallingford all summer, the 81, 99 cents. And I went 14 weeks in a row. And I'd already seen it 2 or 3 times before that. So,
wow. 14 weeks in a row.
Yeah, I was counting.
Wow.
Yeah, I loved it every Saturday.
That's like Star Wars when it first came out. I told you guys it played 54 weeks in a row in both theaters at the theater that I saw it in when I lived in Delaware. That's a year and 2 weeks.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know math like me.
So I don't know what they could possibly do with Harrison Ford at 77 in an Indiana Jones movie. I mean, clearly it'll be all stuntmen work, but it'll be ludicrous to even try to wrap your head around the suspension of disbelief that a 77-year-old guy is jumping on trucks and
the problem, my thinking, Keith, is that what I see on the screen, if it's convincing enough, I'm willing to suspend disbelief and believe it. I'm willing to go with the storytellers. Having said that, have you seen Picard?
Oh, it's terrible.
I mean, aside from it's terrible, I can't look at Patrick Stewart. I think he's going to crumble in half, break or something. He looks so frail. I can't take him as a serious astronaut of any kind.
And seriously, neither did the producers because they butchered his character. I only got through 5 of them. I was insulted. And you're right. I don't know what happened to him. I know he's going to turn 80, but a couple of years ago, he seemed still kind of rugged and tough.
Right.
And yeah, he looks very feeble in this, and it's kind of alarming. And I don't see how. I know they've announced a season 2. I'm not holding my breath that there'll ever be a season 2. And again, here we go with the bad robot. Kill him and bring him back to life in 3 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they the big emotional goodbye, and oh my God, they've actually killed Captain Picard, and he's a robot. Spoilers.
Wait a minute, I haven't seen it yet.
Well, sorry, we're gonna spoil it for you.
Oh,
yeah. You brought it up.
Yeah.
They put him
I've
in
seen
an
it,
android
but I haven't
body.
seen the ending.
But again, if you're gonna put him in an android body, realistically, you'd put him in a young body. You wouldn't put him in the same body he just died in. 80-year-old feeble. It was.
Wow.
It's lazy, freaking lazy. That's what it is. But Indiana Jones, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's even Spielberg dropped out of it. Even he's over the fact that I don't think she should be doing Indiana Jones in his 80s.
Well, Spielberg didn't want to do the 4th one, from what I heard, and he just kind of got beaten down and gave up and said, "Fine, I'll do it." It was all Lucas that wanted to do that one.
Yeah, they also, I forget where I've heard this, but I'm pretty sure I've heard this, and if somebody knows for a fact that I'm wrong, please correct me. But apparently they had a script. Frank Darabont had a script. Then they showed it to Harrison, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's a great idea." They showed it to Spielberg, and Spielberg said, "Yeah, it was a great idea." Showed it to George, and George says, "You know what? I think I'm going to rewrite this myself." After they were already signed on.
I believe it.
Yeah, that movie was off in tone right from the get-go. It felt wrong. Everything about it felt wrong. And, as it progressed through the film and you end up finding out that it's aliens and there's a big spaceship buried in the ground, it just, I was so sad because I had waited my whole life for another Indiana Jones film. Went the opening night, and aside from the buzz in the theater, because they shot a lot of it here in Connecticut, and everybody's excited to see New Haven all over the movie. It was so depressing.
Right.
The fact that they did use aliens actually doesn't bother me, because if you look at the pulp magazines of the 30s and the 40s, when the first three take place, the bad guys are Nazis.
Right.
But when you finally moved all your pulp magazines to the 50s, which is when the fourth one took place, it was all communism, and aliens were the allegory for the aliens. So It kind of makes sense that they actually moved it up from Germans to the Soviet Union and aliens. So that actually doesn't bother me.
The Soviet Union, I get. It was the way the aliens were handled and introduced in it, I think, that bothered me.
Everything was a little bit, it seemed everything was like drawn out, bigger, spending too much. And I don't want to sound like a party pooper or anything like that, because I think we're all guilty when we make stuff. All of us here are creators of content. Janusz Kaminski, the cinematographer of that, Saving Private Ryan, right? Beautiful movie. He comes along and he's making Crystal Skull, and he wants to put himself in there, and everything that he does is big and grand and long shots and depth. And that's not what Raiders of the Lost Ark is. Indiana Jones is always just like, let me get going.
Yeah, the other problem is they shot the whole movie in front of a green screen, and it's clearly obvious. Those jungle scenes where they're ridiculously sword fighting on top of the monkeys, and it looked so fake. It was beyond fake. Just the whole thing, you can tell it was shot on a green screen. It looked cartoony. The original went to those locations. They went out into the jungles. They went into the deserts. They shot the thing on location, and it feels that way. Yeah. I just think, I don't know what happened with the Crystal Skull, and I don't even want to guess. It's just sad in so many ways.
All right, as we end out this segment, guys, what's your prediction for number 5? What do you think?
I would like to see Harrison Ford used as not as goofy as Sean Connery, but in that same kind of role, and hand it off to somebody like Chris Pratt as his new understudy.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it at all, I'd say don't even do it. But Disney owns it. Disney's going to make money with it. So
that's exactly where I'm going with it. Is that I think it's entirely unnecessary, and I wouldn't mind seeing a reboot. It's Chris Pratt, it's Chris Pine, whatever. Just they do it with James Bond, they do it with Doctor Who. I can get used to it. Sure. It's do a reboot, do a continuation, whatever. But just please don't put Harrison Ford in this one.
Yeah, don't ruin a good thing. Make it evolve. Let it evolve. It can grow. All right, guys, thanks so much. I think we're out of time for this segment. We're going to take a break, and we'll come back and close out the show. And we are back, pizza and pop culture, talking with Edson, Gomes, Pete Bradley, and Keith Larsen. Great discussion on comic books and the comic book industry. We're going to take it another direction shortly, but just a couple of reminders, everybody. Please follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Our website is pizzapopculture.com. Make sure you check that little button up there to let us know that you're listening, paying attention, give us some feedback. One other thing to point out is that we are always in the mood for pizza and calzones and sandwiches at East Side Pizza, right here in downtown Wallingford, Connecticut. Now, right now, guys, we are doing our podcast virtually. I am virtually sitting in my virtual chair, virtually talking with these handsome gentlemen, which I can see people. And you can't. What?
We're virtual people.
The virtual people. Take a visit. They're accepting. Right now with the apocalypse upon us, they are accepting takeout orders, and they do delivery. So, and if you are interested in advertising on our podcast, we would love it if you did that. Please send us an email, connect with us in some way, and we would figure some stuff out.
The virtual people would be a great name for a band that we should start when we're done with this podcast.
Sure. I play the accordion, sort of.
And if anybody wants to virtually grab...
I sent it to you.
small sausage pizza at Eastside and drive it up here a couple towns away, just drop a line because I miss Eastside pizza. I need to eat it soon. So yeah, I guess we're gonna say good night here. I just want to let everybody know too that I will be recording a show with the Pint of Comics guys next week. I'm going on their they're doing a movie show. I forgot what the title of it is, but they asked me as the guest to pick a movie, and I picked Star Trek: The Motion Picture and why it's great. So I'm looking forward to doing that.
Very cool. Okay, before we go, let's go around one quick time. Edson, what are you recommending? What are you watching? What are you liking that we should all check out?
Well, it's not a new thing, but I know it was just coming out with a sequel when this whole thing hit. Everyone here or watch A Quiet Place, the movie, which was I thought was one of the best theatrical experiences I've had, and they were just coming out with A Quiet Place 2, another one that this whole thing ruined for me. I'm not sure when it's gonna be out now, but I would go back and rewatch the first one and waiting for that one.
Edson, look at me. I've never seen it.
Oh, okay.
I have never seen it. I
highly recommend it.
Wait a minute. Maybe I'm wrong. Is it The Quiet Place? Is that the one that was the movie where the family was in the cabin and the monster? Or are we talking about that other one where the woman's in the boat?
No, that's Bird Box.
Oh, no, I seen A Quiet Place. A Quiet Place. Never mind. I'm sorry, Edson. Forgive me for looking at my face.
September 4th, Edson, on Quiet Place 2.
Oh, okay. Great.
Pete, what about you? What are you watching?
Well, I am a huge Godzilla fan, and I cannot recommend enough one of the latest ones called Shin Godzilla, which is, if I try to describe it, it's not going to help because it's basically Japanese bureaucracy, the movie.
Yep.
But it's incredibly topical considering how certain things have been handled and how other things have just completely blown up in our faces, and it's all under the guise of a giant monster movie, and it's got incredibly wonderful effects, and I simply cannot recommend Shin Godzilla enough.
Or by its American name, Shin COVID.
Yeah.
Shin COVID.
I'm going to recommend this. It's an animated series called The Spectacular Spider-Man, and it was produced out of Canada a couple of years back, and then ultimately Disney turned it into an animated series called The Ultimate Spider-Man and just wrecked it. And I saw there's petitions going around on social media to bring Spectacular Spider-Man back. This is probably the most accurate portrayal of Spider-Man in media ever.
Wow.
Forget the movies, forget all the other animated shows. It's this one. Nails it. It's great. And there's about...
Is that the one where he's in high school?
Yes.
Okay, I think I have seen this one, yeah.
He nails it. And so if you can get out there and find it, it's on Blu-ray, and I know they have a DVD. The whole series is 4 discs. It's 2 seasons. It's absolutely, spectacular. And that's my recommendation.
I'm watching something that is old, but for me, it's just something I love to watch. On Hulu, I'm checking out MASH. I'm watching MASH again from episode 1. Every episode, there's 300 episodes. Now, for a long time, MASH was one of the longest running television shows. But it's only 11 seasons. And nowadays, even shows like Supernatural and, of course, The Simpsons, Family Guy, those are gone much longer than 11 seasons. That's what I'm watching. I'm listening to MASH. I'm watching MASH, rather. Sorry. Awesome. So, we're good.
Yeah.
Guys, Pizza and Pop Culture, episode 4, in the bag, motherfucker. In the bag. In the can.
I can never get enough of you doing that, Alan.
I'm sorry. We might have to strip that out because it's a PG with my hentai.
Explicit.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
I checked the explicit box.
You checked the explicit just for me. Nobody else has said a single swear. Yeah. No one except for me.
I'm just getting started.
That's right.
Don't
Gosh
worry.
darn it.
Gosh, booger snots. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Remember, pizza popculture at gmail.com. Check it out. Check us out on Twitter. Check us out on Facebook. Please listen to Pint of Comics, Ghosts of the Stratosphere, the 4:30 movie, Inglorious Trexperts, the best movies never made. These are some great podcasts. Check it out. We'll see you next time.
They killed the giggler, man. They killed the giggler! They had no business doing that. None.
I'm funny how? I mean, funny like I'm